So what we know is expectation x is equal to mu, right? So this is mu square, means it is the square of expectation x. So this is expectation x square minus expectation x the whole square, right? This is what we would subtract, and this is what our formula is. Now we can take simple examples from what we have done some time back. We have calculated the mean or the expected value for a random variable that takes 0 and 1 as two values, and the mean of that expectation of that random variable was 0.5, right? So if 0.5 is the is what the expectation is, then can we actually do something here and get the variance of that random variable? So how do you do that? Work through it. Work through it. How do we do it? Expectation x square minus x square. X square is x square. It is the x square's expectation that we are taking, right? So if you have, how do we take the expectation of x square? Sorry, what?
Okay, 0 square.
The only mistake is it is x square, not expectation x. Yeah. So we are doing expectation x square, which is I need to take x square as the values than x.
Yes.
I know the probabilities associated with the x, right? So how would I get it? Expectation x square is equal to, now 0 square basically into 1/2 plus 1 square into 1/2, which is 0 square is, this entire entity is going to be 0, 1 square is 1, 1 into half is 0.5, right? So expectation x square is 0.5, right? Now expectation x the whole square, what is the expectation x? 0.5. What is the square of 0.5? 0.25. So 0.5 minus 0.25 is the expectation of this random variable, which is variance of this random variable, which is 0.25. So for the earlier example that we have discussed, the variance of the random variable is 0.25. So the random variable, which results into two possible outcomes, success and failure, each of which is equally likely, will have a mean of 0.5 and a variance of 0.25, right? Right? We'll have a mean of 0.5 and we'll have a variance of 0.25. Now mean and variance are both extremely important properties of distribution for discrete as well as continuous distribution, because expected value tells us what is the center of the distribution, the variance tells us how the distribution is spread around the center of that distribution. Okay, so that's an important thing for us. Now let's look at the discrete random variables, the types of random variables, discrete random variables and continuous random variables. Should I erase this? Can I erase this? Yeah. So now we look at discrete and continuous random variables. Let's start with discrete random variables. Random variables broadly are of two types. One is called as discrete random variables, the other one is called as continuous random variables. Actually there are third kind of random variables called as mixed random variables. but often we do not encounter mixed random variables in our statistical practice, and so they are serious minority for in terms of distributions for us, and so we'll not really look much into the discrete random variables, mixed random variables. We'll only look at the two types, that is discrete and continuous. Okay, so let's start with discrete. Now, there are various kinds of discrete random variables. What is a discrete random variable? A discrete random variable is something that takes countably infinite or finite number of values. Countably infinite or finite number of values. When we are counting a set of values, the set of values that discrete random variable would constitute will have countably infinite values. Countably infinite actually meaning finite number of values. That is, you finish the counting. You start the counting, you finish the counting. That is that is what that set is. So all such values would say x takes values like 0, 1, 2, up to whatever, would be countably finite number of values. You keep on counting, the counting will have an end to it. We would finish the process of counting. Say for example, the Friday turnout for a movie, Budhiya, would be a countably finite random variable, right? How many people were present for that movie? You start counting, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 137. You stop, right? So this random variable will have such kind of values. The simplest discrete random variable is a coin toss, which results into either heads or tails. We give 1 point to heads, 0 point to tail, so we get a random variable that takes a value 0 or 1, right? And the counting is over for that random variable. So all such things that can be counted and you end up finishing the counting are discrete random variables. So basically there are those set of real numbers which actually you count as 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 up to whatever you keep counting is discrete random variable. So number of students who are present in this class today is a discrete random variable. Number of chairs in the university, discrete random variable. You can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and so on and so forth. Number of sessions people took to get cured, say from depression or PTSD, for a particular kind of therapy. Discrete random variable. Now can you give me examples, more examples that we use in psychology of discrete random variables?
Number of attempts taken to solve a particular problem.
Number of attempts person has made to solve a problem.
Number of recalled items.
Number of items recalled on a particular memory task, if items are discrete from each other. Anything else? Simple things like whether people passed or failed. When you appeared for an interview, whether you got selected or not, right? And more. Now, take the example that you gave. Number of items somebody took, and take another example, number of words recorded. Now, we say that the association between the word is 0. Okay, bit difficult assumption to meet, but we make assumption that associations between the words are zero. So recall of one is not helping the recall of another. Okay, right? So no spreading activation, no power is helping us in recall, and so if we recall one word has no impact on the recall on another word, so we have no problem with Mr. Bauer. So what's the difference between the two examples? In one of the examples, the numbers, the values random variable would take would be independent from each other. Whereas in case of number of attempts, as you go ahead, you end up learning, and so the attempt that you are making every time is getting held by the previous attempt that you made. But still not much of the problem, because number of attempt one person would make is still independent of the number of attempts made by another person. So as long as you're not looking at the internal structure of attempts, there is local independence preserved. Okay? Fine. So this is what random variables are. And so when I'm discrete random variables are. And so when I'm talking about discrete random variables, I would not say that there were 2.5 people who came for the interview. There were 2.8 chairs in the class. There were 0.5 attendance. No. Right? Such values don't exist. The values are 1, 2, 3. There's nothing between 1 and 2. There's nothing between 1 and 2. There's nothing between 2 and 3. Okay? So, such kind of values, the random variables that are discrete, would not take. Right? Fine. Now, if we have this kind of an idea, then what is a Likert scale? What is a Likert scale? The famous Likert scale that we use from strongly agree to strongly disagree or other way around. Is it a continuous random variable or a discrete random variable? Needless to say, it's a discrete random variable, because you take either SD or D or neutral or A or SA. They are discrete units. And so, this is a big trouble in psychometrics. If they are discrete, then we have a lot of restrictions on what we can do with discrete random variables. Say, for example, doing mathematical operations has huge amount of restrictions for discrete random variables. If we can't do that, then how do we add up the scores and then call the score as the total score and do all the psychometrics that we do of what is called as a true score theory or reliability theory or whatever the names that we use, is a serious trouble for us. Psychometricians have been dealing with this problem, and there are methods that people have devised to get rid of this problem, and unfortunately that is not a part of our syllabus, and so I would not be going into the various kinds of solutions people have come up with, which range from classical test theory to item response theory to generalizability theory and whatnot, and various models that you have in IRT and stuff like that, and those solutions that we would not be looking at. But please understand that psychometrics is the point that I wish to make and finish is, because I'm not going to get to teach you any kind of psychometrics, though I love teaching psychometrics, is administering tests, scoring tests, and interpreting results is one component. Often when we learn psychological testing, we end up learning this component, and this is often given a lot of attention to. The other component is understanding the logical process of coming to these numbers. And this logical process is deeply embedded into the statistical theory, which is often ignored in learning and teachings of psychometrics, because often it's easy to teach how to administer a test, how to score a test. For a large number of tests, except for a couple of tests which are difficult to interpret, or you need some reasonable amount of expertise to interpret, a large number of tests, administering, scoring and interpreting doesn't require much higher skills and doesn't require much of the mathematical understanding or statistical understanding or reasoning to do those activities, unfortunately, and that is why they take a front seat in the teachings of psychological testing and not the other things that are supposedly important. Is it working? Wow. Let's start with, in discrete random variables, I would perhaps talk about 3 random variables: Bernoulli random variable, binomial random variable, and Poisson random variable. Okay, Bernoulli. Bernoulli, N-O-U-L-L-I. Bernoulli binomial and Poisson random variable. Fine. So these are the things that I would be talking about. Let's look at the Bernoulli random variable to begin with. Okay, you are participating in experiment which results into one of the 2 outcomes. Okay, either success or failure. Now this experiment will result in either, say, problem solving experiment, reasoning experiment. Most of these experiments, decision making experiments, all of them result into such 2 outcomes, either success or failure. Now suppose I call success. If there is a success, I call it 1. So if x results into success, then 1, and failure is called as 0. Okay, failure is called as 0. So I have the probability. If I need to work through the probability, then what I'm actually looking at is probability that x will be 0 and probability that x will be 1. Okay, probability that x will be 1 is called as P. Okay, and probability that x is 0 is called as either 1 minus P or Q. Okay, fine. Probability that x will take a value 1 is called as P, and probability, now this P is separate than this P. Okay, so perhaps I write this P slightly differently. Okay, so probability that x takes a value is called as P, and probability that x takes a value 0 is called as 1 minus P or Q. Now, the Bernoulli random variable is something that is a useful expression to understand the probability that x will take a value x. Okay, so probability that x takes a value x is equal to p raised to x 1 minus p raised to 1 minus x, p raised to x, okay, p raised to x into 1 minus p into 1 minus p raised to 1 minus x. Okay, say suppose, now this is quite a simple expression. If I instead of p I use q, then I can write it as p raised to x into q raised to 1 minus x, right? If I have to use q. But, this is fine. Now, let's solve it, and you would understand the utility or whatever it is for this distribution. Probability that x takes a value 0. Okay, probability that x takes a value 0. Now, which means that you failed to solve a problem in a problem solving experiment, or you did not reason it correctly in a reasoning experiment, or if this is a single item on an intelligence test, you failed on that single item to give a correct answer, right? Or if there is a single item on a aptitude test, you failed to solve this single item correctly, right? This is the probability that we need to work out. Now this is p raised to x, right, into q raised to 1 minus x, right? Now if I have to work out this probability, and suppose I make an assumption, if I make an assumption that probability of each of it is equal, for some simple reason I make an assumption that probability is equal, then probability of failing is equal to probability of passing. Now, if I put in this value 0 into this equation, then this is p, some value, and right now not, I can make an assumption that it is 0.5, but right now I need not. X takes a value 0, right? So p raised to 0 into 1 minus p raised to 1 minus 0, right? Which is equal to, anything raised to 0 is?
0.
Okay. So 1 minus p raised to 1. So what remains? 1 minus p, right? Okay. So I now solve it for x is equal to 1. Probability that x is equal to 1. Now p raised to 1 into 1 minus p raised to 1 minus 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. Anything raised to 0 is 1. So this quantity is 1. This is p raised to 1, which is p. Right? Have you got to know anything that you were not knowing? We define probability of x is equal to 0 as probability of x is equal to 1 as p. Probability of x is equal to 1 is p. Probability of x is equal to 1 minus p. Probability of x is equal to 0 is 1 minus p. So this tells us that probability of x is equal to 0 is 1 minus p, and probability of x is equal to 1 is p, right? So at this level you might not see much of the utility of it, okay, but this is extremely useful. It comes very handy when we talk about the sequence. Okay, now we can actually work through these ideas. For example, you're coming to the university, okay, and you're standing at a platform wherever you stay, nearest station, at say 9 o'clock in the morning, and you can imagine how bad this time is. You need not imagine, I have to imagine, because I stay on campus, you guys actually suffer. So you're standing at a platform at 9 o'clock. Now suppose I have a structure of class in such a way. I take 4 classes in a week, okay, and the 4th class is a say weekly test, okay. Now if you are absent for the weekly test, it will be marked 0. Fine. Now this creates a problem for you, that among the 5 classes that I am doing, you must attend at least last 3 classes and must not miss that test, because perhaps you can make up for first 2 days by not by taking the notes from others and so on and so forth. So suppose we have such a structure that it's okay if you don't come on day 1 and 2, but you must come on day 3, 4 and day 5 is the examination. So you must be there for the examination. So what you are interested in? You're standing at a platform and you're interested in catching a train, right? Now the train comes. You either are in the train, you're not in the train. I am not considering the possibility that you are in the space between the train and the platform. I am making this probability 0, though I know in reality this probability is not 0, right? There's some small, very, very small probability that you would be perhaps neither in the train nor on the platform, and then that's perhaps not a good situation to be in. So I consider this probability 0. So either you manage to catch a train, not able to catch the train. So this random variable, whether you catch the train, you don't catch the train, follows Bernoulli. Follows Bernoulli. Because either you will be in the train, so I call it success, or you will not be in the train, I call it failure. So since it's either success or failure, I am now interested in this sample space 0, 0. For the 2 days you fail, it's fine, you don't manage to catch the train, and you successfully catch the train on other 3 days, because you must be there in the university the next 3 days. Now this small dependence, I'm ignoring that I know in Mumbai this dependence doesn't come because there are so many factors that take care of that dependence, that as you keep on catching the train over the days, you develop some practice of catching the train, and so on day 1 you fail because of low level of practice, and on day 5 you're successful because you have slightly higher practice. All such things are not counting. We also know that this practice is actually not helping us. This practice doesn't build over 5 sessions, that we for sure know. You need to spend some months together to catch a train at 9 o'clock in the morning, which is going towards town, right? And so 5 days practice doesn't make you any better than what you were previously. Perhaps you get to learn to leave the train, that I am not boarding on this and I am not boarding on the next one, and perhaps I am not boarding the train till 11, right? So in such a short span, the dependence in the trials won't come, that's what I am assuming. Now if I am doing so, what is the probability that I am looking for? Actually, if I want to know the probability of this sample space, then I am looking for 1 minus p, 1 minus p, 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 p. So this is the outcome that I am looking for, which essentially can be written as p raised to 3, 1 minus p raised to 2, right? Which is, if I have to now extend this example to some abstraction, then the total number of attempts are 5. So I say my n is equal to 5. How many successes I am interested in? 3. So x takes a value 3. So if I am interested in 3 successes out of 5 attempts for this particular outcome, then they would come by p raised to x into 1 minus